The Balkan Peninsula. Throughout the centuries, it has been and remains an area of clashes between civilizations and great powers. Otto von Bismarck once predicted the First World War, saying, if a war starts in Europe, it will be because of some foolishness in the Balkans. Indeed, there were numerous wars in the Balkans and wars caused by Balkans in the 20th century. However, the conflicts turned out to be astonishingly wild and brutal, not due to external conquerors, but between neighboring nations. These were wars between peoples connected by shared historical destinies, peoples that twice entered into a common state in the 20th century. What were the external and internal factors that led to the dissolution of Yugoslavia? What was the spark that ignited a series of new bloodshed wars in the Balkans? Why did the Balkans divorces turn out to be so bloody? And what lessons can be learned from those events? Today we will discuss the true geopolitical catastrophe, the dissolution of Yugoslavia. But first, let's briefly talk about the history of this state. Yugoslavia, like other states in Eastern and Central Europe, emerged as a result of the collapse of the Habsburg Empire. After the dissolution of Austria-Hungary in 1918, the Yugoslav lands were united into a state known as the Kingdom of Serbs, Croats and Slovens. 10 years later, following a coup, it was renamed the Kingdom of Yugoslavia. In April 1941, during World War II, German forces and their allies invaded Yugoslavia. The April War lasted only 12 days. A significant part of Belgrade was reduced to ruins by German bombardments, and civilian casualties numbered in the thousands. The country's government, led by King Peter II, relocated to London. It was recognized by all countries as the legitimate government in exile. The territory of the Kingdom of Yugoslavia was occupied and dismembered. An independent state of Croatia was established, which also controlled Bosnia. The remaining territories were divided among Axis powers Germany, Italy, Bulgaria, and Hungary. A genocide against Serbs began. Yugoslavia witnessed an extensive partisan movement, the largest in Europe in terms of scale. The anti-fascist struggle was led by the communists headed by Tito, while the monarchists represented the other side. During the years of World War II, these parties periodically collaborated or fought against each other. The leader of the communist movement, Josip Broz Tito, managed to find common ground with both the West and the USSR. The liberation of Belgrade in October 1944 was carried out by the Red Army and Tito's partisans. This forced the exile government in London to establish contact with them. In March 1945, a coalition government was formed with Tito as the prime minister. However, the coalition didn't last long. After 8 months of referendum was held and the majority voted for the abolition of monarchy in Yugoslavia. On November 29, 1945, the Parliament of Yugoslavia, the People's Assembly, proclaimed the establishment of the Federal People's Republic of Yugoslavia. Initially, Yugoslavia's economic and political system was modeled after the Soviet Union. However, in 1948, a conflict arose between the two countries, leading Yugoslavia to pursue a different path of development. In the early post-war years, Tito proposed the creation of Greater Yugoslavia, which would include Albania, Bulgaria as federal republics within the country. This proposal met with disagreements from Stalin, resulting in the Soviet-Yugoslav conflict and a rupture in relations. The project was not realized. Soviet-Yugoslav relations were restored after Stalin's death. However, Yugoslavia always occupied a distinct position within the socialist bloc of countries. It didn't join the Warsaw Pact. While Yugoslavia participated in the Council of Mutual Economic Assistance, it did so without formal membership in the organization. Yugoslavia, both geographically and politically, found itself between the socialist and Western blocs of nations. Tito was a welcome guest in both Moscow and Washington, successfully securing assistance for the economic development of this country from both sides. Yugoslavia was often described as the most Western country in the East and the most Eastern country in the West. In 1963, a new constitution was adopted and the country changed its name to the Socialist Federal Republic of Yugoslavia. Yugoslavia consisted of 6 constituent republics: Bosnia and Herzegovina, Macedonia, Serbia, Slovenia, Croatia, and Montenegro. Within Serbia, there were 2 autonomous provinces: it's Kosovo and Vojvodina. A one-part system was established in the country with the League of Communists of Yugoslavia as the ruling party. Democratic opposition was suppressed. Tito skillfully maneuvered between Moscow and Washington, capitalizing on the contradictions between them and ensuring Yugoslavia had a significant presence on the world stage. Initially, Yugoslavia's economy showed growth. However, by the late 1960s, the disparities in the standard of living among his constituent entities became evident. Wealthy and poor republics and regions emerged, with the affluent ones unwilling to share their resources. Concurrently, national movements started to awaken. Tito realized that maintaining unity in a country comprised of such diverse regions and nationalities would be challenging. There was another time bomb ticking. The peoples of Yugoslavia belonged to different religious denominations. In 1974, a new constitution was adopted, granting more freedom to the republics and autonomous provinces. The creators of the constitution hoped it would serve as a barrier against separatism. However, these hopes were shattered immediately after the death of Josip Broz Tito. Tito was such a strong and authoritative leader for the peoples of Yugoslavia that after his death, the presidency was abolished. Power shifted into the hands of collective leadership, but it quickly discredited itself. The absence of a strong hand and economic stagnation awakened the dormant specter of nationalism. Just a year after Tito's death, armed clashes erupted in Kosovo between Kosovo Albanians and the forces of the Yugoslav People's Army. It was already then that Albanian nationalists demanded Kosovo's secession from Yugoslavia. The unrest was accompanied by the expulsion of Serbs and the looting of their property, leading to a clear reaction from the Serbs. In 1986, Slobodan Milošević assumed leadership of the ruling party in Serbia, the League of Communists. He and his supporters embarked on dismantling the autonomy of Vojvodina and Kosovo, successfully curtailing their autonomy. This sparked significant discontent among the majority Albanian population in Kosovo, becoming one of the reasons for the later declaration of independence by the region. However, the mass popular movement led by Milošević, perceived by the national republics as a challenge from the Serbian nation, ignited the process of disintegration. Concurrently, discontent began to brew in Croatia and Slovenia as they started to embrace their Catholic identity. In the following years, the desire of Croatia and Slovenia to distance themselves from Belgrade became evident. The aspirations for independence by Croats and Slovaks gained support from the majority of European countries. Should be noted that efforts were made to save the unity of Yugoslavia. Various reform projects were put forward, including the improvement of the federation and its transformation into a confederation. However, from the second half of 1990s, national movements shifted from demanding autonomy to demanding independence. A precursor to future ethnic violence was the brutal mass riots instigated by Croatian and Serbian football fans during a match in Zagreb in May 1990. In the early months of the same year, the final Congress of the ruling party, League of Communists of Yugoslavia, took place. Prior to its completion, delegations from Slovenia, Croatia, Macedonia, and Bosnia and Herzegovina had already left the Congress. The unified party ceased to exist. Afterwards, the Republican organizations of the League of Communists began transforming into independent entities, no longer dependent on the party center. Multi-party elections were held in the republics for the first time, with nationalist forces winning across the board. All these forces aimed for the independence of the regions from Belgrade. In the early 1990s, the political and psychological conditions for a military resolution of the ethnic conflict had matured. These conflicts can be identified in two stages. In the first stage, it was a conflict of all non-dominant peoples with Serbs, who were considered the tutelar nation and constituted the majority in the state governance. In the newly formed states, Serbs became a minority. The second stage involved the confrontation between the Serbian minority and the newly formed nations that had created their own states. Serbs were unable to reconcile themselves with the collapse of the state in which they played a leading role and considered it their ethnic homeland. Serbs in Croatia and Bosnia and Herzegovina were unable to accept their new position as national minorities. These circumstances became the main causes of the armed conflicts. The Yugoslav wars took place in the early 1990s and until the Russian invasion of Ukraine were the bloodiest conflicts in Europe since World War II. The main wars during the dissolution of Yugoslavia were the war in Slovenia, the war in Croatia, the war in Bosnia and Herzegovina. The Yugoslav wars that followed the dissolution were characterized by atrocities, ethnic cleansing, and war crimes. The conflicts in Croatia, Bosnia and Herzegovina, and later Kosovo witnessed widespread violence and suffering, leaving scars that are still felt today. Let's return to the first multi-party elections of 1990. In Croatia, the majority was obtained by the Croatian Democratic Union, HDZ, led by Franjo Tudman. In the same year, Tudman was elected as the first president of Croatia. Economically, the republic was one of the most developed regions in Yugoslavia and it began to strive for independence. These didn't sit well with the Serbs, who constituted an ethnic minority in this republic. The Serbs had vivid memories of events that took place half a century ago when Croatia was under the rule of the pro-Nazi Ustaša regime. During that time, Ustaši organized the ethnic cleansing and genocide of Serbs. Therefore, many were concerned about the newly elected government in Croatia. The Serbian protest movement in Croatia became known as the Log Revolution due to the use of felled trees to block roads and prevent the police from disrupting their referendum. The referendum on Serbian autonomy took place on August 19, 1990, with a majority expressing support for Serbian autonomy in Croatia. An uprising took place in the city of Knin, supported by the Yugoslav National Army, which also provided weapons to the rebels. In September, the self-proclaimed Republic of Serbian Krajina was established. Other areas of Croatia with a significant Serb population took control of towns and sought to join Serbia. This was the first major armed conflict in the series of Yugoslav wars, marking the beginning of a prolonged and violent period in this region. On June 25, 1991, Croatia and Slovenia declared their independence. At that time, armed clashes were primarily limited to Croatia, where the conflict between Serbs and Croats was escalating. However, when Slovenia also decided to secede from the federation, it triggered another war. 2 days after the declaration of independence, Belgrade sent troops to Slovenia. The war lasted only 10 days and was the least bloody among all the wars in the Balkans in the 1990s. Slovenia emerged victorious. Following this, Yugoslavia, Croatia and Slovenia signed the Brioni Agreement, aimed at a peaceful resolution of the conflict, but it failed to halt the hostilities. The central government in Belgrade, predominantly consisting of Serbs, easily accepted Slovenia's independence. Slovenia was almost ethnically homogeneous, with the majority of its population being Slovenes. The proportion of Serbs and other ethnic groups was insignificant. However, the Serbs were not willing to let go of Croatia so easily. The Yugoslav army invaded Croatia and, with the support of local Serbs, began capturing cities and villages. Due to the escalating violence in Croatia, the presidents of all 6 Yugoslav republics were summoned to The Hague by the European community to discuss possible peace plans. Unexpectedly, during the negotiations, Slobodan Milosevic agreed to recognize Croatia's independence. However, when it came time to sign the final document, Milosevic noticed a key difference from the initial agreements. The agreement did not merely recognize the Croatia's independence, it declared all 6 Yugoslav republics as independent states. Milosevic refused to sign the document as he didn't want the dissolution of Yugoslavia. However, all the other republics, including Montenegro, which had close ties with Serbia, signed the agreement, surprising Milosevic. The Serbs put pressure on the president of Montenegro, Bulatovic, who withdrew his vote. The peace plan collapsed. Approximately around the same time, a referendum took place in Macedonia, where 95% of the population voted in favor of independence. Macedonia became the only republic to peacefully secede from Yugoslavia. Following Macedonia, a referendum was held in Bosnia and Herzegovina, and the republic also declared independence. However, Bosnia was the most multicultural republic and consisted of 3 ethnic groups. The largest group was the Bosnian Muslims, followed by Serbs and Croats. The leader of the Bosnian Serbs, Radovan Karadzic, demanded that the Bosnian government abandon its pursuit of independence. The Serbs in Bosnia declared their own Republic of Srpska. On April 27, 1992, Yugoslavia officially ceased to exist, and a new federal republic called the Federal Republic of Yugoslavia was proclaimed. It consisted of only 2 out of 6 former republics, Serbia and Montenegro. Meanwhile, in Bosnia, the Serbs were capturing more and more towns and had begun shelling Sarajevo. The capital of Bosnia would be under siege for almost 4 years. The Bosnian War would become the bloodiest of all the Yugoslav wars. To escape the hostilities, Bosniaks fled their homes and sought refuge in the town of Srebrenica. The United Nations declared Srebrenica a safe zone. However, in July 1995, the army of Republika Srpska, under the command of General Ratko Mladic, took control of this enclave. The Srebrenica massacre claims the lives of over 8,000 Bosniak Muslims, making it the largest mass murder in Europe since World War II. The International Criminal Tribunal for the former Yugoslavia recognized the Srebrenica massacre as an act of genocide. During that time, the Serbs also shelled the market square in Sarajevo, resulting in death of 70 civilians. In response, NATO launched a large-scale bombing campaign against Bosnian Serb targets. At the same time, Croatia decided to retake the territories captured by the Serbs. By this time, Croatia had a stronger army. In May and August 1995, during military operations, the Croatian army liquidated the Republic of Serbia and Krajina. The overwhelming majority of Serbs fled the country, including those who had lived in Croatia for centuries. Serbian villages were burned to the ground to ensure that they could never return. Then, together with the Bosniaks, the Croats fought against Republika Srpska in Bosnia. Western countries continued to seek ways to end the wars in the Balkans. Finally, in late 1995, the Americans managed to organize peace negotiations. The talks took place in Dayton, Ohio. After 17 days of negotiations and several withdrawal maps, a peace agreement was finally agreed upon. It was signed by the presidents of Serbia, Slobodan Milošević, Bosnia and Herzegovina, Alija Izetbegović, and Croatia, Franjo Tudjman. As a result, Bosnia was preserved within its borders, but it was internally divided into the Federation of Bosnia and Herzegovina and Republika Srpska. The Bratsko district, which is under international administration, was also established. The Dayton Agreement, which put an end to the Yugoslav wars, did not entirely end the violence. In 1998, the Albanian majority in the autonomous province of Kosovo launched a war against Serbia seeking independence. With NATO support, the Kosovo Liberation Army took control of the territory of autonomy. In 2008, Kosovo declared itself an independent state. However, currently, Kosovo's independence is recognized by only 46% of United Nations member states. In the European Union, this figure is higher at 81%. In the end, the once large and powerful Yugoslavia was reduced to the Union state of Serbia and Montenegro. In 2006, Montenegro became independent following a referendum. The Yugoslav wars were accompanied by a large number of war crimes, violence against civilians, and genocides. The estimated death toll, including all parties involved in the conflict and the civilian population, ranges from 130,000 to 160,000 people. To restore justice and hold accountable those responsible for violations of international law, the International Tribunal was established for the first time in 50 years. During its operation, nearly 150 trials were conducted. Charges were brought against the leaders of Bosnian Serbs, Ratko Mladic and Radovan Karadžić, both of whom were sentenced to life imprisonment. Former presidents of Yugoslavia and Serbia, Slobodan Milosevic, was also among the accused. However, he passed away in his prison cell in The Hague before verdict was reached. Let's highlight the main reasons for the dissolution of Yugoslavia into independent states. Economic reasons. Yugoslavia consistently faced complex economic problems. Uneven development among republics and regions led to asset redistribution where wealthier entities were taxed to support the poorer ones. This created conflicts within the ruling elites. The reliance on external borrowing to cover significant budget deficits also contributed to economic challenges. National reasons. National sentiments emerged in conjunction with economic factors. Developed republics were reluctant to be donors for the Yugoslav economy. The sense of belonging to Croatian or Slovenian nationality intensified tensions within the country. The idea of unified Yugoslav nation was not realized as evidenced by the 1981 census, where only 11% of the population identified as Yugoslavs. The concept of Yugoslav identity gained some traction in major cities with mixed populations, but failed to resonate in rural areas where ethnic and religious differences persisted. Demographic reasons. The significant natural increase of Albanians in Kosovo and the decrease in the proportion of Serbs in the region played a crucial role. The demographic surge of Albanians allowed them to feel like the dominant ethnic group. The issues in Kosovo significantly contributed to the development of Serbian nationalism. Socio-political reasons. Yugoslavia consisted of a diverse array of nations and ethnicities, including Serbs, Croats, Slovens, Albanians, Montenegrins, Slovaks, Hungarians, and others. Each group had its own culture, way of life, and mentality. Notably, the poorest regions of the states were once part of the Ottoman Empire, while the more developed entities were part of the Habsburg Empire. Yugoslavia was initially founded on the principles of brotherhood and unity. However, it ultimately disintegrated due to internal struggles and civil wars. Today, the former Yugoslav republics are generally peaceful and prosperous countries. However, the situation in Kosovo remains unresolved, and the possibility of new military conflict in the Balkans still exists. The latest escalation of tensions between Belgrade and Pristina occurred in December 2022. The rulers of Yugoslavia did not learn the lesson from the Habsburg monarchy. Sooner or later, the principles of centralism and ethnic federation become obsolete. The foundation of a state can only be a developed civil polyethnic society. However, throughout the years of Yugoslavia's existence, such a society did not form. The bloody breakup of Yugoslavia serves as a painful reminder of the destructive power of ethnic nationalism and the consequences of unresolved historical grievances. Is it true to say that the Yugoslav experiment failed? Yes, it is, but it had a chance to survive. Josip Broz Tito attempted to create a system where none of the Yugoslav nations would have dominance. And this option turned out to be an utopia, just like the entire Yugoslav idea.